Hello friends, today I am going to cover the top 10 Node interview questions that are most likely to be asked from a candidate who has experience from 0 to 2 years. If you are new to Node, then don't miss them, and if you are experienced, then revise them at least one time, because sometimes we know only half information and that is dangerous. Hey, my name is Happy and I help candidates in cracking interviews. So let's start with the first question.
And yes, for a real interview experience, first hear the question, pause the video, then think about your own answer, then play my answer and compare it with yours.
What is the difference between Node.js and Express.js? Again, a very short answer question. You already know this diagram, right? And the difference is here. Node.js is a runtime environment that allows the execution of JavaScript code on server side, whereas Express.js is a framework built on the top of the Node.js. It's like a wrapper over the Node.js. Why was it built or created, this Express.js? The answer is here. It is designed to simplify the process of building web applications and APIs by providing, simple routing system, middleware support, etc. To simplify, okay. So basically, by using Node plus Express, building server-side APIs will be very, very easy and fast. That's it. What are the differences between client side and server side? Very important question for understanding the complete flow from the client to the server. Let's quickly explore. So suppose you are a user and you open any website in your browser by entering the URL. Now one request will go to the UI server, which is mostly created in Angular, React, or any other UI side technology, okay? Now, for some simple operations like image download, that can be, and the operations which can be performed on the existing data, which is already there in your UI, like sorting, filtering, that can be done. These kind of operation can be done by the UI server itself. And the UI server send the HTML and JavaScript as a response to the user browser. Okay, but for some complex operations like fetching more data or different data, for that the client has to send the request to the backend or API server, and that server again written in the JavaScript language, but this time with the Node.js runtime. Okay, then our Node API will fetch the data from the database, get the response, and send the response with the data back to the UI. So the UI will basically finally display the data to you. Now here, the browser and Node will both execute JavaScript, right? But there are differences between the way the browser will execute and the Node will execute. So let's see. First, the browser runs on the user web browser, whereas Node runs on the server. Nothing special. Second difference is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are languages in the browser, whereas JavaScript is the language in Node. Next difference is document window navigator and event objects are present in the browser, but they are not there in the Node. So for example, this document.get element by ID. So that kind of things you cannot do in Node, because Node.js of course does not need any interaction with the direct interaction with the UI, right? Next difference is like request response server and data. These database objects are present in Node, but not in browser. So of course these are important objects for handling the request and response on the server side. So browser don't have much to do with it. Okay, last difference is browser responsibility is to handle the UI display interaction of the users and the client side logic, whereas the server side or Node handles business logic like data storage, access, authentication, authorization, etc. Great. So these are some differences between how the client side execute the JavaScript and the JavaScript in the server side node. Alright friends, before moving to the next question, if you have not yet accepted the never give up challenge, then accept it. Promise yourself you will never give up until you crack the interview. Start and accept this challenge by writing never give up in the comments right now and feel the confidence. What is multi-threaded programming? Let's quickly understand multi-threaded programming so that we know the difference between single thread and multi-threaded. So here the user and client side send the request to the server, you already know. Then the server will first create a thread T1 which will start this task 1. Okay, now listen carefully. In a multi-threaded approach, when one thread starts one task and it sees another task after that, then immediately another new thread T2 will be created and that T2 will start the tasks too. Okay, so while the T1 thread is waiting for task 1 to be completed, in parallel the new thread T2 will start task 2 and therefore both tasks are being executed in parallel. Similarly, when T2 start task 2, then for the next task 3, another T3 is created which will start task 3 and then T4 thread is created for task 4. Finally, you can see how different tasks have different threads in a multi-threaded environment. This approach is very good for CPU intensive tasks where many tasks has to be performed parallelly. If you remember our computer processor and it has multiple cores, right? So having more cores means they are much better for multi-threaded programming applications. Okay, for heavy desktop software it is very good, this multi-threading approach. But for internet APIs, this multi-threaded approach can be a problem because multiple threads can create deadlock problems if not properly handled. That's why we prefer a single-threaded asynchronous approach for JavaScript and Node applications. What is asynchronous programming? Now, this is our main target and this is what we will use in our Node applications. Previously, we saw how synchronous programming is not good for performance and also it's a blocking approach. That's also something we will solve here. In Node.js, suppose a request has to complete 4 tasks, okay, like this. Then first a single thread is created which will initiate the task 1, okay. Now listen carefully. Now this thread T1 will not wait for this task 1 to be completed, will not wait, okay. Instead, after initiating task 1, this thread T1 will immediately jump onto to initiate or start the next task 2. Then after initiating task 2, T1 jumps on to initiate task 3 and then task 4. Great. Now you have the most important point about single-threaded asynchronous operations. And the point is that our single thread T1 is just initiating the task and not waiting for its completion, right? So now you can imagine how in this case our tasks are running concurrently. And if you remember, in synchronous way, the total time was 10 plus 8 plus 5 plus, for 4 plus 5, right? 27 seconds total, which is the least time. But now the total time taken can be 10 seconds in the best case, but time can be something more. It depends on your hardware also. Okay, but in any case, it will be better than the synchronous operation. So that was, we solved the first problem, the time and performance problem. Another problem was the blocking issue. So here task 1, 2, 3, 4 while executing are not blocking the execution of the next task. Okay, so when task 1 is executing, tasks 2 in parallel concurrently can also execute. Okay, so therefore it's a non-blocking way, the synchronous approach. All right, that's all about asynchronous programming. Now you might ask one more question, like when task 1 is executing independently, then this thread T1 is busy in starting the other tasks, right? It is doing its work. So how the system will know when the task 1 is finished? So there comes the role of the events in Node. Whenever any task is completed or finished, it will raise an event. Okay, so then that event will immediately listened or heard by our thread T1, and our thread will immediately stop whatever it is doing at that point of time. Okay, and what T1 will do? On priority basis, it will immediately report the task completion to the source. And then again, T1 will resume whatever it was doing earlier. So that's why we also call Node.js as an has an asynchronous programming approach and also the event-driven architecture. Okay. In upcoming question, I will discuss more about events. Before that, here are some steps for the execution of asynchronous operations using a single thread in a node, which I already explained, writing it down for quick revision later from the book. And here is the simplest and most complete definition of asynchronous. In Node, asynchronous flow can be achieved by its single-threaded, non-blocking, and event-driven architecture. Remember in JavaScript also, by using the async await or promises, you can achieve this asynchronous programming. Okay. What are events, event emitter, event queue, event loop, and event driven in Node? All right, this question will clear up all your concepts about the events in Node. First of all, what is an event? An event is like a signal that something has happened in a program, like a notification, like a action has happened. Like if you remember, we have those click events in the UI, right? So now these events or notification must have some source from where these events are originated, right? So these sources are called event emitters, who generate the events like this event 1 and event 2. All generated events are then stored in a queue, okay, which we call what? Event queue in Node. Okay, clear until now? Then Node will pick one event at a time, and the event handler, or we can also say it event listener, will perform the code as per the event requirement. So basically here you will write the code that how you want to handle the event in your application. Okay, so it's nothing like event handler is nothing but it's a function, okay, so written by us. Okay, in case of threads, it is written by the node to how to handle it asynchronously inside the node runtime environment. Okay, all right, after that the next event will be picked by the event handler from the event queue, and it goes on like next event, so on, so on and so on. So the picking up of these events like this one by one from the event queue in order in the same order is called the event loop. Okay, so great. That's the whole story. Easy, right? About how the events are originated and how they processed. And also here I have written the simplest and the most easy to understand definitions of events, event emitters, event queues, event handlers, and event loops. Okay, all I already explained. And finally we have this event driven architecture. Event driven architecture is a combination of all of the above. What does it mean? It means operations in Node are driven by or based on the events only. Okay, driven by events. So that's why we call Node as the event-driven architecture. Great, that's the answer to this question. Hi friends, just a small notification. This video is part of my full course, Top 200 Node Interview Questions, which includes Express, REST and MongoDB questions also. All questions PDF book link is present below in the description. So like these candidates, if you don't want to miss anything for your interviews, then try it. Otherwise, no problem. Let's continue. What is NPM? What is the role of node modules folder? In your project, if you expand this node modules folder, then here you can see the libraries, the dependencies that can be used in your node project. Okay, these dependencies will make your development easy and simple. So if you delete any of these dependencies, then might be some functionalities of your node project will not work, stop working. Okay, so never touch this folder. Great. What are node modules then? The node modules folder contains all the dependencies of the node project. And what is NPM? NPM is the node package manager that manages this node modules folder. Okay, or you can say manage these dependencies for your node project. That is NPM. What is the role of package.json file in Node? When you create your project for the first time, you will find this package.json file in your project. This package.json file contains the project metadata. Metadata means the information about your project. For example, here you can see the information about this project. Project name, project version, project description, project author, project license. Okay, so this is the information about this project, right? And the same thing I have written here also for later reference. Again, metadata is just the information, like a book is there, so content is inside, but the name of the book, the author of the book, this is the information, the metadata about the book. Okay, what are modules in Node? What is the difference between a function and a module? So not in just Node, but in every other technology, module also means a piece of functionality. Okay, what it is? A functionality. For example, in an e-commerce application like Amazon, orders, products, payments, these are different modules. So what is a module? Here is the definition. A module contains a specific functionality that can be easily reused within a Node.js application. Second point is, ideally in Node, one JavaScript file can be treated as a single module. So here this my module 1.js is one module which contains this say hello function. Now the question is, okay, so what is the difference between a function and a module? See, module is a concept. For example, order is a module in an e-commerce application. But inside the order module, there can be one function or even more than one function, multiple functions. Like in order, we have get order list, submit order, and post order, right? So that is the difference. Okay. And here I have written a module is a broader concept that encapsulates the functionality, while a function is a specific set of instructions, statements within that module. And yes, modules can contain multiple functions and variables. Great. In short, you can say that module is a feature which is implemented by using functions. In Node project, normally we create JavaScript files. So like this, one JavaScript file represent one module. But yes, you can put more than one module in a single JavaScript file, but that is not a recommended approach. You should never do it. Okay. So great. That's the answer to this question. What is module wrapper function? Now what actually happen if you create a JavaScript app.js file in your Node project like this, and you will run it, then it will give you the proper output like this, right? But how? Here we do not have any function. So how it is executing without the function? Okay. So actually, internally, what Node will do, it will convert this code, or you can say wrap this app.js code inside a function like this. So now the same code, you can see the wrapped inside the function, okay, automatically by Node. You do not have to do this. And this function will be executed finally. So this wrapper function is obviously automatically generated by the Node. You need not to write this. So the why you need not to write this? The purpose is basically to make things simpler and shorter for the developers. So that's the answer, and the simplest and easiest definition is here. In Node.js, each module is wrapped in a function which we call the module wrapper function before it is executed, right? What are the top 5 built-in modules commonly used in Node projects? Now there are many built-in modules in Node, but the most famous and most used modules are these: FS module, path module, OS module, events, and HTTP modules. I will quickly cover the role and the importance of these modules in the upcoming questions. Explain the role of events module, how to handle events in Node. Most of the things about events and this diagram I already explained in previous question, right? You remember? Here are the definition of events: event emitter, event queue, event listener, event loop, and event driven architecture. All I already explained. Now let's see the event module, how to implement in Node. For that, first we will import the event module, and then from that we will get a class event emitter. Okay. Now this class has many functions and properties. And to use those functions, first we will create the instance of this event emitter class like this. So this we call instance or object also. Now we can use on function of the myEmitter object to register the event listener. Now you can ask, okay, so what is the meaning of registering the event listener or event handler? Now listen carefully. Registering an event listener means whenever an event of this event name, okay, which is the first parameter, whenever this event name will occur, then the second parameter of this on function, which is a complete function logic, it will execute. Okay, got my point? So that is event listener. So great. So until now this event name still has not occurred, okay, in this code. Okay, so let's create this event. Here see we are raising or emitting the event name by using the emit function of the myEmitter object only. Okay, so what will happen now? The above event listener will listen to it when this event will be emitted. It will be created. Then above event listener will listen to it, match the event name, and run this function logic. Okay, function logic for it. That's it. Clear? Great. Finally, here you will find the output. Now remember, in real application you will not emit events like this. You will get some request from the front end application, and then internally your node that request is a event only. Okay, and then your node application will handle and then assign it to the get, post, put, okay, which you will do in your code. So, and also remember here, first we have to register the event listener before emitting the events. If you emit the event first and then you will register the event listener code, that means event listener is not yet registered, and hence you will get the error. Great. That's the whole story of the event implementation in the code. And here I have written a few points about about event emitter, which I already explained, and I hope you liked this answer. What are event arguments? In the previous question, I explained you this code, right? How can we import the events module, get the event emitter class, from there we created the myEmitter object, then we registered the event listener by using the on method of the myEmitter object. Now, when we are emitting the event, Then we can also pass some additional information in the form of parameters like these argument 1 and argument 2 along with the event. And that additional information is called event arguments. These arguments will then be received by these parameter of the callback function above, and then we can use them inside the function as per our application requirement. Okay, so in short, if you want to pass some data along with the event, then you can use this event arguments, and the same thing is written here also. What is the role of create server method of the HTTP module? Answer is very simple. The create server method of the HTTP module in Node is used to create an HTTP server. Now let me show you the code quickly, and in 5 steps we will create the HTTP server by using HTTP module. Okay, first step is import the HTTP module. Second step is to create an HTTP server by using this create server method like this. So basically here your server is now created and it is able to handle request and response which it is accepting as the parameter. Now here the second parameter of this create server function is itself a callback function, right? So which is basically the logic when you will receive the request, which this logic will execute after you receive the request and before sending the response back. This in between logic will execute. Got it? Okay, so but right now it's not complete. Your server is still not able to listen to any request. Okay, your server is created but it's not listening. For that, you can first choose a port number on which the server will listen the incoming request. And finally, by using this listen method of the above server object, now your server is able to listen to the request at this port number. Clear? Great. So finally, to test this code, run this command node create server.js, which is the JavaScript file name only. And when you will open the browser and you will enter this URL localhost with the port number, and you can see the response of your node applications. Why you can see the response here in the browser? Because it is hosted by the HTTP module. And here is this hello world is coming from the second parameter function of the create server method. Great. That's how we can create a server and enable it to listen the HTTP requests from the UI server. That's the simple answer of this question. What is middleware in Express.js and when to use them? Very important question. Let's understand with the help of a flow diagram. First, we already know we have a front end and here is our REST API, suppose. Now let's suppose it is created in Express, right? On that we have to assume. Now the HTTP request will come from the front end, and first inside the REST API the request will hit the middleware. Okay, now remember one thing, middleware is nothing special but it's a function only. Now you may ask one question, you can ask like when middlewares are function, then why are we not just calling them function? Why we are using this middleware word for them? See, callbacks, constructors, middlewares, all these are functions only. Okay, but because they do a specific kind of job, a specific kind of functions they are, therefore we assigned them a different name to them so that they can be identified in a very clear way. Okay, so for example here middleware function act as a middleman between the request and the application endpoints, the get, put, post, okay, endpoints. So it's acting as a middleware. Okay, clear? All right, now this middleware or function will perform some logic inside it. Here with the request it will perform the logic, and then by using the next method it will pass the HTTP request to the next middleware. Okay, then this second middleware will also execute the code inside it and pass it to the next middleware. And after executing all the middlewares only, then only the request will reach to the application endpoints like get, post, put, delete. And then the HTTP response will be sent back to the client. So now you can imagine how the request is being processed by the different middlewares. And if you notice, these middlewares are like very common functionality for which a developer has to write the code in, I think, almost all application. So basically, whenever a request will come, you will log the request details, then you will authenticate or validate the request, and then you will do some codes for security. So these are very common functionalities in every application. These are not business logic. It is for security, validation, all these purpose. Okay. And yes, I will explain them in detail in upcoming question. Okay. So one more thing here. Together, all these middlewares are also called request pipeline, because all requests are coming from the front end and have to pass through this pipeline, and then they will reach the methods, the business, the get, post, real methods. Great. That is the whole story of the middleware. And here is a very easy to understand but the complete definition of the middleware. A middleware in Express is a function that handles HTTP request, performs some operations on that request, and passes the control to the next middleware. Alright, now in upcoming questions, we will explore the middleware implementation. Congratulations for completing all the questions. As I always said, most students study to just learn, but you don't have to just learn, you also have to crack the interview, and facing interviews need courage. For that courage and spirit, all the best from my side. And yes, if you have not yet accepted the never give up challenge until you crack the interview, then accept the challenge now by writing never give up in the comment section. And yes, don't forget to like and subscribe the channel. Thank you.